All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Errol Spence Jr. Dominates Danny Garcia, and in my opinion, elevates himself to the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Let's talk about the Errol Spence Jr. Danny Garcia fight and what that means for boxing moving forward in this video. All right, welcome back, welcome back. So, Errol the Truth Spence Jr. is back, and he is very evidently the truth. Last night in Dallas, Texas, he completely dominated Danny Garcia, a top welterweight, a guy that has never been dominated in his career before, and he did it coming off of a 14-month layoff and a horrific car accident. If you look at Errol Spence Jr.'s last 6 fights and you compare those to anybody else in boxing, and you consider what Errol Spence Jr. has done coming off of an accident, there is nobody in boxing that is fighting the level of competition that this guy is fighting and showing up and really putting the work in like Errol Spence Jr. is doing. And at this point in time, man, like I said before the fight, if Errol Spence Jr. dominates Danny Garcia, I said if he knocked him out, but man, it was a one-sided fight, dude. Like the whole fight, I was sitting there watching, and I'm ringside watching how it goes, and it was maybe the second round in when I was like, this fight's over. Errol Spence, there's nothing that Danny Garcia is going to be able to do to Errol Spence Jr. that is going to keep Errol Spence Jr. from continually pressuring him. And I thought, that there was a good chance that Errol might have got him out of there. But Danny Garcia showed that he is an extremely talented fighter, that he is very, very, that he is very, very focused on, in the ring, and that he has, that he is somebody that you really have to take serious. You had to take him serious before that. You definitely got to take him serious moving forward. But he fought the best fight that he could fight, but he was just outclassed by Errol Spence Jr. And he said as much. He was like, man, there's just nothing I could do with that guy's jab. I mean, he kept working the jab. Everything that he kept doing, he kept throwing me off with his jab. So it wasn't that he was bigger and longer and stronger. He was just, according to Danny Garcia, Errol's just a better fighter, man. But like what I said coming into the fight, that's pretty much how it turned out. Errol Spence Jr.'s, in what I thought was going to make the difference to the fight was going to be Errol Spence Jr.'s work rate, the length and the height of Errol Spence Jr. and his ability to fight from the outside. And, the fact that Errol did not look drained, and the fact that he looked like he could go a lot of rounds. And that's pretty much what happened. Errol Spence Jr.'s work rate was just too much for Danny. Like you could see the way that Danny was never for very long in a position where Errol couldn't hit him with something. And Errol just kept pushing the pace. And then when it looked like Errol was wearing down Danny, and Danny was starting to get busted up by them body shots, some head shots, and then Danny was like, tried to, step to Errol. Then you saw Errol's boxing skills come into play where he just kind of, like towards the end of the round, he would just back off of Danny and be like, nah, you're not going to throw any like haymakers or anything like that. He took away from Danny the ability to flurry at the end of rounds and help convince the judges, that he might have won that round. So Errol with his work rate, took that off the table. And with his defense, it's just, all 4 areas of Errol Spence Jr., all 4 areas of scoring criteria in boxing, you got to see last night, and you got to see it in spades. The ring generalship, Errol was the one in control of the pace of that fight and forcing that fight the whole way. And I think that he does that against everybody, and I think he does it as well or better than anybody in boxing. So ring generalship, the defense. Look, Danny Garcia was trying his best to hit Errol Spence Jr. with shots, and I think one of the things that is very underestimated about Errol Spence Jr.'s defense is the fact that he comes in like this. Like you think that because he's coming in behind a high guard and he's, he all the way to like connecting his elbows like this to try to keep people from coming up the middle. He'll adjust it and come out to the side a little bit for hooks. He'll catch somebody just I've seen him land a right on Danny Garcia or left on Danny Garcia, and then Danny Garcia came back with a shot, and by the time that shot came back, boop, his hand was there to catch it. I mean, and he was catching it like boop, 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 boop on the defensive side. And I think when you see, like for me, seeing that ringside, it was a lot easier to see, like, oh, Danny's throwing punches, but these things aren't landing. It looked like it connected because it connected with his gloves, but again, that is Errol Spence Jr.'s defense. So if you look at clean, effective punching, that was all night, and it's been that way on everybody. His defense, the reason why I'm having him pass Terrence Crawford on that pound-for-pound list for me is Errol's defense. I think Bud's defense is his athleticism and the fact that he'll switch to southpaw, kind of throw you off. But Errol's defense, he has defense, very, very good defense when he is right there in your chest. And I think that's just really the difference between the two, man. And then, of course, when you look, like I said before, you look at the level of competition. You have Sean Porter, you have Danny Garcia, Sean Porter, Mikey Garcia, right there. That is better than most people have had in their last 6. Those 3 wins right there. Danny Garcia, a former unified champion at 140, a 147-pound champion. Sean Porter was a 2-time 147-pound champion. You got Mikey Garcia, who's a 135 and a 140-pound champion. I think he actually won it at 126 too. Man, those are really good wins against highly technical fighters who all fight in different styles, right? Mikey Garcia doesn't fight like Sean. Sean doesn't fight like Danny. Danny doesn't fight like Mikey. But yet Errol's style has been consistent and works with all 3 of them. And I'm telling you, when he fights, when he fights Terrence Crawford, I think that you're going to see the same thing, man. Just watching how he was fighting Danny Garcia, I don't really see what Terrence Crawford is going to do significantly differently than what he was doing with Kell Brook. And like the thing that stood out to me about Kell Brook and the thing that stood out to me about Aegis Kalvanakis is that these guys are connecting on Bud in the first couple rounds of the fight. And he's hitting them with straight punches right down the middle. And it's when Terrence uses his athleticism and starts, just really getting aggressive with the guy that the guy really can't handle it. But Errol, because he's pushing the pace like that, and he's so fundamentally sound, he's so tight, I don't see Bud catching him I don't see Bud like doing what he did with Aegis Kalvanakis and, rocking him with a counter shot and backing him up against the ropes and then kind of, throwing, what did he do? He kind of half faked a left hook, but then came with the uppercut. Dude, Errol is just so pushing forward so much. I just don't see that. I just don't see that happening. But again, for me, the major reason why I have Errol Spence Jr. going to number 1 pound for pound is obviously the loss of Vasily Lomachenko, Canelo Alvarez being on steroids, Terrence Crawford not really having a lot of competition. Gennady Golovkin ain't fighting. Gennady Golovkin hasn't fought anybody of any note in a couple years. Really and truly, when you look at the level of competition for these guys, who really stands up to what Errol Spence Jr. has been doing? And then you take into consideration the fact that he did it by overcoming after he overcame a car accident. And then he didn't even try to find second tier competition to go in there and beat. He was like, no, if I'm going to be able to, if I'm coming back, it's not going to be against some gatekeeper type of guy. It's going to be against somebody that's a real contender so I can see where I'm at. And now we see where he's at. He's the best fighter in boxing, man. When you look at the type of guys he's willing to fight, look at the way the guys he's fighting, the way that he's beating these guys. For me, I just don't think that there's much of a discussion anymore. Now, if Terrence Crawford had not fought, Brook, if he had fought Sean Porter, then maybe there would be something different. But even look at that. Like, Errol has beaten back-to-back Danny Garcia and Sean Porter, right? That's the same thing that Keith Thurman did, right? But you add Mikey Garcia, and then you realize that Terrence Crawford is still not talking about fighting either one of those guys. And so the fact that Terrence won't fight him, Errol beat him, coming off that layoff, the way that he did it, and the way that all 4 areas of the scoring criteria of boxing, Errol has in spades, dude, he's the number one guy in the welterweight division, and he is the number one guy in boxing altogether, in my opinion. But that's my take. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.